In this video, we will be going over the pinstripe trait in crested geckos. We will go over the history, the inheritance, the market potential, and the morph combos of the pinstripe gene. So the pinstripe is a structural trait that acts dominant. If I were to breed this pinstripe to an animal that doesn't have any pinstripe whatsoever, I would get what we call partial pinstripes. When you look at this gecko here, this is a super empty back, and I chose this gecko in particular because it kind of highlights the pinstripe down the back. So the pinstripes are the spiky scales that we see on the head that continue down the dorsal into the tail base. Now with this guy here, it's pretty easy to see because the empty back takes away all the markings in the middle of his back and it highlights the pinstripe scales. It might be harder to see on some other geckos that are full dorsal or have a lot of more pattern going on. But I chose this guy so you guys could see easily what the pinstripes are. Now pinstriping tends to push the pattern horizontally, whereas tigering, which is the antithesis of pinstriping, will actually cut the pattern vertically. Now this girl here is a tricolor harlequin. If you look down her back, you can see she doesn't have those pinstripe rows of scales, and she has a lot more breaks in her pattern vertically, unlike the pinstripe gecko we showed you previously. So sometimes you may see people refer to some geckos as 98 or 99% pinstriping, and what they mean is when the pinstripe scales go all the way down, but you see there's like one or two little scales that are missing there, so it doesn't have every single pinstripe scale that it's supposed to have. So that would be a 99 or 98% pinstripe scale, depending if it's missing one or two. Pinstripes were developed in the early 2000s by Alan Repashy when he started to find geckos that had traces of pinstripe scales down the back, and when he bred those together, he would get more and more pinstriping down the dorsal. Eventually, of course, we went from dashed pins to partial pinstripes to full pinstripes or 100% pinstripes. And this took him a couple years, a couple generations, but it passes down quite easily. And as he started to stack the pinstripes on top of each other, we started to see different evolutions of the pinstripe, which were thicker scales, lateral stripes, and more. Now, pinstripes have been one of the most popular traits and morphs that have come about crested geckos, and I actually think it's one of those key traits that helped crested geckos go mainstream. For whatever reason, the symmetrical pattern on their back is very attractive to us, and that is what took crested geckos to the next level. The market on pinstripes is pretty wide because these days, almost all geckos have pinstriping unless they're being bred particularly to not have pinstripes. And you could find pinstripes that are $30, $50, and then you could also find pinstripes that are $1,500, because these days pinstriping is something that has developed along other traits that we have bred for. So now I'm going to show you different combinations of the pinstripe trait with other genes. That way you can get a better understanding of what it looks like when you put it together with different phenotypes. So this right here is a quadstripe crested gecko, which is a pinstripe that has two lateral stripes along its sides. Now this is what you get when you stack pinstripe on top of each other for several generations, and what happens is that it makes the harlequin markings on the sides turn into a perfect lateral stripe. Now quadstripe come in different lateral striping, right? Some will have perfect lateral stripes, some will have a couple breaks, some will be wavy. It just all depends on how much stacking has been done on these guys. So as you can see with this guy here, he is a dark and cream quad stripe pinstripe, and you can see one lateral stripe here on his side, on his right side, and then the other side has another perfect lateral stripe. So that is what we call a quad stripe. Now this is a different variation of a pinstripe, and this is what we like to call a harlequin pinstripe. The reason why we call this one in particular a harlequin pinstripe and not the last one is because you see the side markings that are white and cream? They're more influenced by the harlequining and the tiger than they are the pinstriping. It almost looks like flames or just scattered markings coming from the bottom and trying to reach up towards the dorsal. And that's why we refer to this one as a harlequin pinstripe and the last one as a quad stripe. Now, technically, the last gecko also has harlequin markings, but for the sake of trying to describe the gecko, we call this one a harlequin pinstripe. Now, this one does have a lot of cream, a lot of white. When you see the back on this one, it is basically full of cream. But if you look closely down the dorsal, you will still see those raised spikes down the dorsal all the way down to the base of the tail. This is a 100% pinstripe, also known as a harlequin pinstripe with white pattern. So this, in my opinion, is the best way to display the pinstripe trait. These two are super empty back pinstripes. The super empty back trait, or gene, whatever you want to call it, is being a little bit debated right now because some people try to suggest that it is just a line bred trait. Either way, it is an awesome looking gecko. When you create that dorsal that doesn't have any markings, it really just highlights and makes the pinstripes pop, and it is a great way to display pinstriping if that is what you are into. Some of the coolest things about super empty backs is that if you get to clean it out really well, you'll get absolutely no pattern in the back, and you'll get a really nice high contrast between the base color and the pinstripe scales. This guy has a darker base and a better contrast. Now, I will say the pinstriping is not particular to any base color or morph. It is a structural trait that is independent of any color. So you can make pinstripes in red, yellow, dark, lavender, basically any coloration you want. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is a full explanation of what the pinstripe gene is. And if you are curious to when we will have our next Gold Standard Gecko Club competition, it will be in Daytona Beach in August of 2026. So if you are wanting to compete in that competition, make sure you send us an email and we'll catch you guys there.